Good evening, everybody. Today we're going to do another painting in acrylics. We're going to be using golden acrylics for this painting of an egret out in the marsh. So first thing I'm going to be starting with is yellow ochre, white, and just a little bit of cad red. So while I'm doing that, doing the sky, let me tell you what I'm using on my palette. I actually have, like I said, cad yellow, yellow ochre, cadmium red, medium, alizarin crimson. I also have ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and white. So the reason why I'm doing this, well, it's actually a medium-sized canvas, is in acrylic is because I'm using the Golden Open Acrylic series. They tend to stay wet a little bit longer, just like oils. So, I mean, for those of you who wants to transition from oil to acrylics, this would be a good paint to use in order to make that transition. So now I'm just giving it a test drive on a larger painting, see what I can do with it. As far as what I'm using a flat brush. It's a Creative Mark. They're by Jerry's Artorama. They're, fairly affordable brushes, and they're awesome. I mean, awesome for acrylics. And I'm not being endorsed by Jerry's Artorama, just to let you know ahead of time. It's a white synthetic, and it works perfect with all acrylics that I've tried so far across the board. So, and it's a number 10 brush that I'm using for this painting. So now I'm just laying out in yellow ochre, and now I'm using actually a little bit more cad red in order to make this orange at the base. Also, one color I forgot to mention that I'm using, it's Australian sienna. It's like a burnt sienna. It's the American version of burnt sienna, or actually Indian yellow. It's more like the American version of Indian yellow. It's a semi-transparent and really, really strong color. I must say, that particular paint is from Matisse, and I have a lot of good things to say about Matisse. They're great paints. So going along. So here I'm going to be starting with the cloud system. I'm going to be using cadmium red, medium, with ultramarine blue. And the reason why I use cadmium red medium as opposed to my ultramarine blue, as opposed to my alizarin crimson that I usually use to make my purples, is because if you want a nice beautiful purple, you'd want to use alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. It makes a beautiful, beautiful purple. But in this particular instant, I wanted a dulled out purple, very, very dull. So in order to do that, I used a cad red instead, because the cad red medium has a little bit of has a little bit of yellow inside, I believe, in the mixture. So it just makes it a dull red. And actually, I'm even using a little bit of the orange that I made for the top of the sky, the yellow ochre that you see on top. I actually added a little bit of that in the mixture to do the cloud system. And you can see, and I will go over this a little bit more because I wanted to have it more, a little bit more grayish than what I have right now. So now the one thing right off the bat that I have to tell you that I noticed with the Golden Open, I'm very happy with the paint, but the only drawback is, yes, they stay wet long, which is a plus, but if you try to add layers on top of the paint that's already still there and wet, it will tend to lift the bottom layer. So my advice to you is, as you paint, I would do do all the preliminary work, let it dry. Basically what I'm saying is do your base coat first, and then go back on top of it when it dries a little bit, and do your second layer painting, and then I think you'd come out all right. Because as you will see, I struggled a little bit I'm still trying to master this medium. I mean, it's a great medium, believe it or not, but it's just there's a little bit of a learning curve with it, and I'm still learning about the Golden Open. Although it's a very good paint and allowed to blend very easily, just like oils do. But now the only difference is with the oils, I would have been able to blend without bothering or lifting the bottom layer. Maybe it would have just muddied the colors a little bit more, but would not have lifted the paint from the canvas. So I had to let it dry a little bit and continue on. So I'm working all over the place in order to give certain layers, like the top, to dry just a little bit, or at least to tack up, so I could put additional layers. So that's the only problem with that paint. And I've had other artists who agreed with me who are using golden. Um, so here I am adding a little bit of orange to the clouds, which is going to dull that purple down a little bit more. And here's one of the parts where I am struggling with the colors lifting off, and I'm trying to be very gentle in how I'm painting this. And I downsized the brush to a number 6 flat. And here I'm actually using ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson to do the upper portion of that cloud to get a different kind of purple, so it has more chroma, and you can tell the difference between the two. How the base of this cloud has more of the orangey purple color versus the top, which is a little bit more purple than its base. And once again, the colors are muddying a little bit and lifting. So I'm trying to be a little bit careful how I'm approaching this painting. I mean, just like everything else, you learn a new product, and it's a learning curve. But all in all, I was happy with the end result of this painting. It's just now that I know more about golden, for next painting that I do, I would have to let the painting dry a little bit, and then go back over with the next layer, and it shouldn't be a problem. So right now I'm using a little bit more of the Australian yellow from Matisse, which is, I think I'm going to start calling it Indian yellow for the American version, so we don't get confused. I'm not going to keep going back and forth trying to name this thing. So basically you could be using Indian yellow for this part is what I'm doing. Right now the colors will be a little bit, grayish and chroma, and there is a reason for that. That's why I'm not too concerned about how the colors are coming out right now. I want it a little bit grayish because, as you will see as we progress, when I'm going to start using pure pigment, the colors are going to pop versus the portions which are grayed out a little bit, as you will see a little bit later on. So, and like I said, this is the part I liked about the Golden Open. See right here, the blending, it gave me enough time to continue on to blend and adjust the colors as I want, and blends into the yellow, making it, a little bit of a gray color. So it's a plus. Normally I would have a little bit harder time if I did with my regular acrylics to paint this the way it is. It would have been a little bit more choppier, more of the impressionistic style. But now I know what to do for next time. So you're looking as I'm, struggling a little bit. You're seeing this as it's happening. Now I do want to tell you, I've used Matisse before, and I'm using it a little bit with this in this painting. What I liked about Matisse, it's how it flows. It flows great. It's a nice paint. The colors are very highly pigmented, and I like it has just enough time of open time, meaning like however long I have to mix the colors. It has just the right amount of time to be wet in order for me to blend. And I think I'm going to start purchasing a little bit more of that paint, and eventually I'm going to do another demo with just using Matisse as far as acrylics go. So now, as you can see, I'm using a little bit more of the yellow ochre and a little bit of cad red, and I'm mixing it in with the upper cloud, because that's where a lot of the sun, you'll see the brighter part of the sunlight's going to go. And I keep going over, you'll see me keep going over this paint, is because some parts, as you may see, will start lifting. So I'm trying to add thicker layers. Here I'm using cadmium yellow medium. This is pretty much pure pigment unmixed. And I'm going over, basically it's going to be like the silver lining in the sky. Now, this is why I didn't paint all the colors. I let the colors be grayed out, because now as you can see the difference between the purple, the yellow, and the upper part of the sky, which was a little bit more grayed out, you're actually able to see some of the highlights better than if, you know, I had used pure pigment, or I had not let some of the colors blend together as I was painting the clouds. Now for this orange, I had mixed cadmium yellow medium and red, cadmium red medium together to get this orange. And right now I'm just basically trying to cover all the white areas, and so I could better judge my colors later. And once again, I'm not being careful on how I mix the colors. All right, now for this part. So what I did here, I kept that orange that you saw me mix at the base, and started adding a little bit more red, and cadmium red, by the way, and a little bit of ultramarine blue to get this grayish color at the base of the clouds. And I try not to make it everything uniform, so you can see some of the higher chroma purple show through as well. And just like you're seeing now, adding more of the orange, mixing it together. And this is the part where some of the colors were lifting from the base, and I just had to use thicker paint in order to cover that. Some parts of it was okay, it was wanted, because some of the red came through and it just gave diversity to the clouds, and it wasn't so bad. But it could become a problem if you're doing a painting and you're not letting this dry through before adding the second layer. So man, I wanted to do this a la prima and not have to do this in multiple sessions. So now I'm back down to a number 6 flat. I'm just working a little bit more of the details in the clouds. And here I'm using a little bit of alizarin crimson and white in order to do that top part of the clouds that I just finished. Okay, so now we're working on the distant landscape. I'm using ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and a little bit of burnt umber and white in order to give this distant landscape. I'm gonna have to add a little bit more color here, because and in some parts I will be using a little bit more ultramarine blue and white, and the reason why I do that is to give that parts of that landscape landscape more distance, to give it more distance, basically is what I'm doing. There you go. I don't know if you'll be able to see the parts where I use a little bit more ultramarine blue to create a little bit more distance from this grayish purple that I used for this far distance landscape. Now all I'm doing, you see me just scumbling it in, it's just to give you a hint. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just to give the viewer's eye indication that, hey, you know, there's distance back there, there's another landscape. As you can see right here, you probably can see a little bit more of the ultramarine blue that I'm using. ultramarine blue and white, and a little bit of burnt sienna. So now I'm just going to be adding reflections from the sky, a little bit of orange there. And another reason why I did this the way I did it, as you will see later on throughout the painting, is I'm going to try to bring the viewer's eye right back into the bird. And you will see what I mean by that later on. We'll talk about it a little bit more as the painting progresses. So the orange is basically reflecting the sky. It's basically like the ripples in the water. So now I'm starting doing the marsh. I'm using a fan brush, like a number 8 fan brush. And this is a bristle brush, by the way. This is not a synthetic brush that I'm using. And what I use as far as colors, I use alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and maybe a hint of cad yellow medium. Now, why did I use those colors in particular is because ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson are semi-transparent color, semi-transparent to a little bit more transparent depending on the manufacturers that you use. And when you use your semi-transparent colors, they make a more like a stronger dark color and not so much grayed out. So by using ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, you can make a nice beautiful dark color, and using burnt umber with that mixture, you can make all the darks that you want. I never use black on my palette, never. You can make black by just using all 3 primary colors, whether you want to use ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and a little bit of yellow. You will make a beautiful black, because just using straight black and another color, well, I'm sorry, to me it steals, how should I say, I can't find the words for it. It just will not come out the same. It would not come out the same. It just sucks the life out of the color. There you go, out of the painting. Versus mixing these other colors, the way I just named them, actually adds a little bit more life to the painting. The colors, the tones. You just can't beat it. Try not to use black if you can help it. So I'm continuing on. This is going to be a little marsh here with, I'm going to paint like a little ledge, a little sandbar right after this. As you can see, and this is where the egret's going to be in this area. So now I just progressed with number 4 flat brush. What I did was the mixture that I used to make the grass, which was ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson and a little bit of burnt umber, I just added white to that. It's basically all I did. And then now I'm adding just a little bit of ultramarine blue to give it more of an enhanced color, and just going over that same color. So because I'm trying to, since it's closer towards me, I'm making the color a little bit cooler. So yeah, I just want to extend that edge just a little bit more. And now don't forget also to do your reflections, just like you saw the grasses that I did at the base at the same thing. Here, just working it a little bit more. All in all, this, it was a great learning curve for me with the golden. Now I know what to do for next time. I just have to let it dry a little bit more in order to go over with the next color, unless there's something that I really wanted to blend together. But in this particular moment, I really, like right now, I'm adding a little bit of ultramarine blue, and I want the ultramarine blue to mix with the grasses. So I'm going back towards the sky. I'm trying to add some of the highlights where they're going to go, and I'm going to do another coat another layer, should I say, I shouldn't say another coat, I'm not painting a house here. Another layer of orange, and you will see me doing the sky holes with that same orange. Now that the sky had a little bit of time to dry, it's actually a bit tackier than what it was earlier. It's not as wet, so I'm able to add extra layers on top now without a problem. And this is where I started learning that, okay, well, maybe I should let it dry next time. So here. And again, now I'm using a filbert brush to do the sky. This particular brush is from made by Soho, which I believe is a brand by Jerry's Artarama. I believe that's their own brand. And I was fairly surprised. These brushes are cheap, they hold their shape, and it was great. It was an excellent brush to use for with acrylics. I've used it with my other acrylics, and this brush is phenomenal. Again, I don't work for Jerry's. I'm not sponsored by Jerry's. I'm just giving my honest opinion of what I think about the brush, and it's an excellent brush. If you want to do acrylics, I would recommend it highly. So now I'm going back over the top of the clouds, graying it down a little bit more and adding a little bit more highlights in the yellow. As you can see now, that had time to dry. You can see as I'm adding more pure pigment that it will actually start showing through over some of the grayed down colors that I did earlier. And I'm not really specific about how, I just, trying to give an impression of, should I say, like the silver lining in the clouds. And I'm not trying to be too careful about not mixing with the top part of that cloud, this purple cloud. Even if it mixes a little bit, it's fine, It's just going to give it more of a definition. So I'm not trying to be perfect here. Remember, when you paint impressionistic, it is what it is. You're given an impression. I'm not going for, perfection or anything like that. So it's not the whole point. Impressionistic, it is as the name implies, it's just to give you an impression. It looks good from far away, but when you get up close, you're like, oh, I can see. Yeah, you can see the strokes. So now I'm working on the Egret. I'm using a lot of white, ultramarine blue, and a little hint of alizarin crimson. And I'm using a round brush in order to do this. Oh, I'm sorry, the filbert. I don't know why I said that. There you go. Now I'm trying to be careful. Now, I did have to add 2 layers to the bird because some of the layer at the base was lifting a little bit, muddying the color, so I had to apply thicker layers. Now I'm using the round brush from, I believe this is from Royal Langnickel, which is another great manufacturer for acrylic brushes. It's a synthetic white as well. Trying to be more careful, and I'm using a little bit more of ultramarine blue on the neck area, and I'm basically just working a little bit more of the details of the bird. Now in doing this, you have to be kind of careful because when it comes to the details, I'm trying to make the beak with and what I use to make the beak, I just use cad red and cad yellow medium together, and just a little bit of white, just so it would show against that dark background that I just did. Also, what I forgot to mention was when I was doing the grass, I said I used alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, but in some parts I did do a second layer. I added a little bit more of the cad yellow. It made it kind of a brownish green color that I did over the purple, which came out very nice. I was very happy because the grass was still a little bit wet, and I was able to like blend it together to give it a nice effect. But I did have to use a lot of paint, a thick paint, in order to do that. So otherwise, if you put your paint too thin and too watery, it would lift the base color. So this is what I'm doing right now. I'm going over some of the marsh grasses, but this time adding a little bit more yellow and a little bit, just just a hint of white, and just going over. And I'm using every angle of my brush, just twisting it a little bit as I'm going up and down. I'm not just using one side of the brush, I'm flipping it and then just, whisking the colors. And if once you get to the top of the reed grass, the marsh, add a little bit more water to thin down the paint, so you actually have those really thin leaves, or should I say straw grass, towards the top, in order to make it very whiskey. There you go. Now you can see that I'm using a little bit more yellow and adding a little bit more white as I'm going through with this. So you're able to distinguish between the two colors. Now remember, acrylics dry a little bit darker. Had I not added a little more white, then that green would have been a little bit too dark, and you would not be able to really distinct it from the purplish red that I used. Everything would have just looked like one uniform color. So I have to use a little bit more white in order to distinct the colors, and make up for the drying, which will, and the acrylic we'll call shifting. It will shift colors. So in order to compensate for that, I had to go one value lower than the grass. Here we go again. I'm just, like I said, going back over it, adding thicker, a little bit thicker paint. And right now I'm just doing the reflection of the bird in the water. There you go. I'm just wisping the colors around a little bit, just to give it an indication, like, it's like a ripple in the water, so that you just you're not just looking at the bird here. So there we go. I hope you guys really enjoyed this painting, and I hope that you learned something. If you have any questions or comment, please feel free to ask, and I will try to help you with this. And I could tell you more about the product if you so wish. Now that I've got my name signed, I want to say thank you for watching this video. Love you all, and hopefully I'll have more videos to come. Bye.